Well, welcome everyone to AIARE's continuing education series for the 25-26 season. Tonight, our subject is going to be the debrief element of the AIARE Risk Management Framework. We want to dive into this topic, how it's taught, why it's so valuable, why it's so essential to our framework. And we're working tonight with Richard Bothwell from SlabLab, and a great presenter, a great content expert on this topic. So grateful to have you here, Richard. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
You want to show us the next slide? We'll get into our
Yeah, sure.
agenda
Let's
here.
let's do it.
So just some rules about the reminders about the format. I think in the webinar format you can't have your videos and mics on unless we turn them on. So just be aware that this is being recorded, and um, so any interaction you have with us is going to be captured and then displayed on YouTube, as a recording for folks to watch later. Some functions you can interact with. We're going to do a poll, and you'll see those options pop up. We've got the chat turned on so that you can chat with each other primarily. That's why we turned it on, so you could talk to each other. But the Q&A is a good way to talk to us. Like if you have something that occurs to you, a question you have during Richard's presentation, feel free to drop it in the Q&A, and then I'll queue those questions up for him. We're also going to have a Q&A session at the end, so if something feels more pertinent for the end, then you can do it then. But if it feels immediate, just pop it in the Q&A, and I'll ask him. Next slide.
Yeah, here we go.
Yep, we're recording. So just a reminder on that. Next slide. Here are our presenters. I'll introduce myself and then hand off to Richard. I'm Ron Funderburk. Like I said, I'm the program manager at AIARE. I focus on curriculum and continuing education. And I'm also an AIARE course leader and instructor. So I'm out there doing the thing with y'all in the winter too. And I'm a career guide and educator. That's me.
Awesome. Thanks, Ron. And I'm Richard Bothwell, and I am an AIARE course leader and instructor and have been for a bunch of years now. And I'm pretty passionate about teaching avalanche classes and specifically the AIARE brand of avalanche classes, and really driving towards the student learning outcomes in these classes. So I'm really fired up to be presenting this tonight. And I am part of SlabLab. I'm one of the founders of SlabLab, which is a research and design organization. It's human-centered design. We focus on problems faced by the backcountry traveling community. That's who SlabLab is. We do that through a series of interviews, long format, qualitative interviews with backcountry travelers of all stripes across the United States. From those interviews, we synthesize what we hear to expose themes and patterns that show up from the experience that people have, from the actual experience. And then from those themes and patterns, we create actionable insights and share those every year in an annual report you can go check out at slablab.co. One of those insights that we came out with is that everybody that we've talked to has said that it's hard to find backcountry ski partners. And so we have created an online community really geared towards having a place for intentional partner finding and a place for people to continue their educational journey. And like I said, everything that we do, you can find on our website at slablab.co.
I dropped that URL in the chat. Folks
Oh,
want to
cool.
have a peek.
Awesome. So we're going to go through a couple of things tonight. Ron's going to tell us why the debrief is in the AIARE Risk Management Framework. We're going to talk a little bit about what we've heard at SlabLab about, from the mouth of students, what their experience has been. And then we're going to give some ideas on how to teach debriefing. And importantly, and important for me for sure, is to get your experience, whether you're a brand new instructor or a pretty seasoned vet instructor with AIARE. I'd really like to hear some of the experiences you have in how to teach debriefing and challenges that you've faced as you've been doing that, or challenges if you're brand new, challenges that you might expect to face. And we'll wrap things up with a little Q&A session at the end.
Great. So, just a reminder to everybody, some of these slides hopefully look familiar. I popped in, I pasted in a sentence from the rec curriculum guide that reminds us like why each element of the AIARE framework exists. And that line sits there right there prominently for us to remember that AIARE courses teach a risk management process. And a risk management process, well, which one exactly? Well, the ISO 31000 is there's a translation of it into kind of our vernacular there on the upper left. And it just reminds us that we do a lot of work to understand the hazards in front of us, to make a plan to either reduce or mitigate or deal with those hazards. And then most importantly, if you look at this long column on the right side of the ISO 31000, that's this idea that just because the particular interaction with the risk ends, that we'll never interact with that hazard again. So it's vital in the ISO 31000 that folks evaluate what just happened, talk about it, talk about what they would do differently, uh, just do something so that the risk experience isn't wasted. And that then wraps around to establishing a brand new context, a new context interacting with the same hazard or a different version of this, a different version of the hazard. That long blue column there on the right is what we call debrief. Debrief for us fits into our framework here. And let's just have a look back at this familiar diagram from our field books. This is our version of risk identification, risk analysis, evaluation steadily, and using all the team to evaluate that risk. And then at the end of the day, we uh, introduce this monitor and review process that carries us on to the next outing. So it's it's not an element of curriculum or teaching that we can omit either in an Area 1 or an Area Rescue or an Area 2. It's actually vital to the process. And when you see a different version of that diagram, the ISO 31000, you just see how prominent it is. It's not living as an afterthought at the end of a cold day out there. It's actually a key, vital part of the process. So that's why we teach it. That's why it's so integral to our risk management framework.
Cool. Oh, good.
We're going to do a little poll here. That's a poll question there. I'm going to launch the poll, and you'll be able to interact with it. Here we go, launch. And I'd love for you all to just have a look at these poll questions and answer. It's gonna inform what Richard talks about next. So yeah, have a look there. It's just a couple true false questions for you. We want to we're intrigued to watch your results come piling in. Did you see the results, Richard?
I can't.
Okay, I'll share them aloud.
I don't see them.
All right, we're gonna give it 30 more seconds. If folks ran out to the bathroom and came back, they'll hopefully see that there's a poll.
Wait.
And there we go.
Awesome.
So 16 out of 18 folks filled out the poll for us, and here are our results. Question number one. With regards to the AIARE decision-making framework, I spend as much time teaching debrief as I do plan. And 19% of folks said that that's true. They do. They spend as much time debriefing as they do planning. And 81%, 13 out of 16, said that they do not. Our second question. The way I debrief in my own backcountry with my own backcountry partners is the same as the way I teach AIARE 1 students to debrief with each other. 10 out of 16 said that that's true.
Oh,
That's 63%. And 6 out of 16 said that that's false. They are doing something a little differently in their own parties than they're teaching their AIARE 1 students.
yeah. That, oh, there's the answers. That's that's awesome. I don't know, Ron, not to derail our time plan here, but is that in line with what you expected or
That's kind of what I expected. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, more people are, I guess my one surprise is more people are staying, tr just role modeling the way they do it themselves to their students than I would have guessed. In my own practice, I'm my personal debriefs with my partners are a little more shorthanded because we have a have a vernacular that's really familiar to us, but and that would not make sense to my AIARE 1 students.
Yeah.
But I'm happy to see how many of our attendees are role modeling pretty precisely what they do with their own parties.
Yeah. And I'd back up with what you're saying and I think it's really in line with what I found in the field and what we hear and what we come up with at SlabLab in that, we have this idea that runs through, it's like a common thread that runs through a lot of the things that we find at SlabLab that simply says we should be right sizing, whether it's trip planning or the tours or the teams, or our debriefs. It should be, we should be right sizing these things. And it doesn't surprise me, Ron, to hear that you have maybe some shorthand for how you debrief with partners that isn't what AIARE students might see from you, but tracks with me for sure. Should we keep going?
Yes, I'm going to close this poll and hand back off to you.
Awesome. All right, yeah, so let's just burn right into this. These are some of the things, as I said, we've talked to recreational and professional backcountry travelers for the last 4 years. And, we're learning about their experience on the snow. And this is some of the things that we have heard directly from their mouths that we may, as area instructors, might find interesting. Um, Students tell us, and this is not, a news flash. A lot of students are telling us that they've been overwhelmed. A lot of people talk about like, oh, took an Area 1 class and it was a fire hose of information, and they walk away focusing on like the bright shiny thing in the room, like some new pit test. And that might be they're doing, it might be the instructors are distracted by that shiny thing in the room as well. Um, but the role of a debrief, and really sometimes, Ron, I even wrote this down as you recited it from the slide about ISO 31000, says it really concisely. AIARE courses teach a risk management process. From my experience, what students should be walking away from is I have a process that I can use every day when I go into the backcountry. And that is not like it is not like, hey, I learned how to do a 40-meter upslope propagation saw test. That's not what we're trying to teach people. We're trying to give them a process that they can use each day. So um, few people that we talk to at SlabLab can recall the learning outcomes for their class. When we ask people what they actually learn, many will tell us that they learned how to read an advisory, or they learned about the danger scale, or snow metamorphism, or some cool CalTopo hack that their instructor showed them. But I don't think I've ever heard someone say, I've learned a framework for managing the risk of traveling in the backcountry. And that framework, by the way, SlabLab, consists of prepare, plan, ride, debrief, and having good teamwork throughout. So that's one thing that we've heard from folks. Um, Another insight that we've come up with is this idea, we have for years, the Avalanche Patch has been saying that the snowpack is a wicked learning environment. But there's a lot more areas that we've unearthed that have a lot of low feedback. And often we believe it's due to a scarcity of experience, and we should put ourselves in the mind. I try to put myself in the mind of a student and what their experience has been, and really it's pretty scarce. So things like how do students even rate the quality of their Area 1 course? What are they comparing that to? They've probably only taken one, right? How do they rate the quality of their trips? How do they rate the quality of their partners, their plans? They often have very few examples, and without debriefing them, they're missing the opportunities to improve on all of those things. So debriefing itself, just that skill of debriefing, also takes practice and feedback to improve. And we as instructors, and I'm a peer instructor here, we have to get folks on that track of doing it, be awkward, understand that it's going to be hard, practice it, debrief the way you debrief how you're debriefing, and get better and better at it. Another insight that we thought was pretty interesting is that folks perceive the debrief after their Avalanche classes to be either used for formal, like being really formal, or only if things are going wrong. And we've heard this from a lot of different people. They'll say that the debrief is formal and really heavy. And I have a feeling that that's because that's the only way they saw it modeled in their Avalanche class. Um, but they'll also say, and this we thought was really interesting, they'll also say things like, oh, I always talk about the trip with my friends. Like we always go out and have a beer and talk about the trip and where the good snow was and what time the snow turned to mush, or how we went around the corner and all of a sudden we were in better or worse snow. So they are debriefing their trips. They just don't realize that they're debriefing their trips. And and I think we can do a better job of helping people understand, back to this idea about right sizing. We can do a better job of helping people understand that sometimes that is a debrief. You're doing it. You're gaining some wisdom from your experience just by talking about where the snow was good or bad that day. Another thing that we've heard is, and it's rarely have we ever heard someone say, I debrief on good days. We always hear people say, yeah, like I had a bad day, so I debriefed, or I don't debrief because I generally don't have bad days. And I like to tell people that debriefing is how we repeat the things that have happened. If we have a good day and we want to repeat it, we want to have another good day, we want to have better days in the future, let's figure out why today was such a good day so that we can do the same things again. So a few things about teaching these debriefs. You know, for me, I'm a big fan of benefits. I used to work in a bike shop and it was kind of rammed into my head, like, don't talk about the features, talk about the benefits. Don't talk about air sprung, or coils and air springs. Talk about plush ride and how comfortable it's going to be. And so I like to think about what the benefits of debriefing actually are. And this is like right out of my experience, and I'm sure we could come up with a longer list if we wanted to do that. But I think with debriefing, with high quality debriefing, we get better team alignment. We get better plans for the next time we go out. We find better snow, and we get this opportunity to turn our experience of each day into knowledge and wisdom for the future. And I'll tell you, we could probably sell the idea of debriefing on any of these benefits or any of a host more that we could come up with. But if we just tell our students that you are going to ski on better powder and you are going to avoid skiing on crusts if you debrief your days, we will probably get a lot more uptake in people debriefing their trips. And if we use the AIARE debrief prompts, we will be led to these benefits. So let's take a look. So benefit number one on my list here, team alignment. The prompt in the blue book is actually, review your pre-trip plan. And what I like to do at the end of the day is have someone tell me what the plan was, not what we did, but what we planned to do. And almost always the students will say, well, we went and did this, that, or the other thing. It's like, no, no, no. I know that's what we did. We're going to get to that later. What did we plan to do? Somebody tell me what our plan was. And I find this to be really valuable because it sets the mind in the mind of the students like, oh yeah, this is what we set out to do today. This was our plan for the day. It reveals when our teammates had different interpretations of the plan. I've seen that happen where somebody's like, oh, we planned to go ski the glades of perpetual sunshine. And somebody else is like, what? We did? No, I thought we were going to avoid the glades of perpetual sunshine, ski the couloir of imminent peril. I thought that was our plan, right? Um, it reveals to us when our teammates had different ideas about what the plan was. And it's already starting to paint a picture for us of how the results of the day were similar or different to the plan. Like, oh yeah, we set out to do this. And even though we're not talking about it yet, yeah, we didn't actually do that, did we? Or we did do that. So, reviewing today's plan, super important prompt and leads to that benefit, I believe. Next benefit, improve your ability to find desirable snow. I think this is, again, like for me, I'll admit it, I'm a skier, I'm a snowboarder actually, but what I care about is finding good snow every day. And the prompt in the book is how did the weather impact our snow conditions? And this really is, I think, a crux move for us in the debrief. And I think as instructors, what's important is that to us, I think this is obvious. As experienced professionals, we can, by this stage in our career, if you're an area instructor, we're probably already reasonably good at intuiting where good snow is and when it's going to be there and why. But we have to remember, put yourself in the mind of a beginner. It is not obvious to our students why the snow went from frozen to good to slush. It's not obvious to our students why all of a sudden we had great pow, and then at the end of the day, there was a little bit of a skin forming on it. It's not obvious to our students why, as we went around the corner, we suddenly changed our ski penetration. And so we have the opportunity while we're debriefing and modeling the debrief for our students to help them get on this path to improve their ability to find more desirable snow. And that should be, I think, reason enough to do it. See, you will make better plans. Um, you know, the prompt is about, tell me the strengths and weaknesses of the plan. And again, this is where I have to remind my students, don't tell me about what we did. Tell me about the plan and what was the strength of the plan. And, when the students are sharing the strengths of the plan, what I try to do is incorporate those strengths into tomorrow's plan. And when they share weakness, I try to improve that in tomorrow's plan. And in my practice, it is very much, prepare, plan, ride, debrief, and that debrief flows right into the plan for tomorrow. And I think this helps show students the value, the utility of doing a debrief. So we'll go through the plan, and I'll ask people for the strengths of the plan. And people will give me, some answer like, we had options built into the plan with decision-making criteria. I'm like, oh yeah, that's a great one. Or we said we'd stick together and we defined that as within outside voice earshot front to back. Like, awesome. We all knew where the keys to the truck were. That was a strength of the plan. We built debrief time into our time plan. That was a good thing to do. And if that's the case, I will literally turn the page in my field book and I will write down in the white space, have options, define sticking together, where are the keys to the truck, so that I know on the next day, whether the next day is tomorrow or 2 weeks from now, the next day that I go skiing, I'm going to open my book and I won't have to remember what I learned from my last debrief. It's right there in the book for me. Same thing with weaknesses. Tell me some weaknesses of the plan. Oh, we didn't plan for nutrition. We didn't plan for hydration breaks. By the way, I'm guilty of that. I am terrible about stopping for breaks. I'm happy to do it, terrible at actually doing it. And I end up telling my students that. I'm like, hey, and you can prompt me to do that. We didn't discuss a turnaround time or how many laps people wanted to do, would be a weakness in the plan. We didn't know who had the inReach. We knew there was one, but we didn't know who had it or where they kept it. Like, great, turn the page in the white space. Maybe this will change as AIARE redefines, the field books, but like, man, it would be great to turn the page and just write in the white space there. Remember water breaks. Remember your turnaround time. And these are the things that I learned from my experience. They weren't necessarily prompted by AIARE. And speaking of experience, this is sort of a big picture view for me. I think this is where we get to, through debriefing, turn today's experience into wisdom and knowledge, so we can make better decisions in the future. And I don't know if there's anyone on the call who is old enough to remember that picture out of the old AIARE curriculum. But when I first saw it in the AIARE curriculum, we were not using it to talk about um, what I use it for now, which is trying to disentangle the idea of outcomes from our decisions. But this is really where we get to improve on our path. And this is where we start talking about, what did we actually do? Not what did we plan to do, but what did we actually do in the field? If we repeated the outing, what would be similar and what would we do differently? And we really want to try to disentangle this idea of between outcomes and decisions. And if you're a reader, Annie Duke has a great book called How to Decide. She lays it out really well about the difference between outcomes and decisions. And just because we have a good outcome does not mean that we had a good decision. So the point here at this part is to discuss what we did, not what we planned to do. And I find that separation is super helpful. And this is where our behaviors, the things that we actually do, are either reinforced and we continue to do them, or we have an opportunity to change them. So what was good? What did you like? How did the team do? Did we hit our goals? And some of the things that we might hear are things like, I liked how Jimmy spoke up early about how slow everyone else how slow everyone else was, and how cold he felt. I want all my teammates to feel like they can speak up. Like, great, that's great feedback. I'm glad Jimmy worked out a detailed time plan, so we felt confident in taking another lap. We should do that every day. Great. Great. Let's make up good time plans. And there's the utility. We got to ski more laps because we had the time plan. I liked how we had slow Jimmy take the lead. Jimmy, by the way, is my terrible partner in all of my examples. I liked how we had slow Jimmy take the lead, so we all went at his pace. I'm going to remember that for future trips. Right? So we're going back, reflecting on the day, figuring out what we liked, so we can try to do the same things over again. But then we also want to ask, like, what didn't work? What were some decisions that we made that we'd have a really tough time defending if we were going to do it objectively? And this is where we can really change behaviors for the next trip. And this is where we can really work hard to disentangle the outcomes from the decisions. Here's a few examples. We skied that 35-degree slope on the way out, even though it was closed. Nothing bad happened. We all made it. but we thought it was a bad idea in the morning. It probably was a bad idea in the field too. Good opportunity for discussion on that. Or we skied that 35-degree slope on the way out without having a discussion about it. I know it was getting late and we were all in the back to the barn mode, but I think we should have regrouped and discussed it before anyone dropped in. Right, so there's another example. Or how about, we discussed and decided to ski the glades before Jimmy caught up with the group on the ridge. We should have waited for him before making that decision. He might have had some information to add to that decision. And so by having those kinds of discussions, I think we're really starting to separate the outcome from the decision-making process. And I think that's what we're really trying to do.
Hey, Richard, can you go back to your last benefit slide?
Sure.
Al just has a question for us. Al writes, Richard, I think your ideas are great, but really they're for a student group that has a bit more experience. He
Mm.
says, for many level one students, they're coming in rather green, so we might need to back up. How do you suggest we have them look at their day and debrief not only the plan, but their performance and preparation for the day?
Boy, it's a great question, Al. Yeah, that's interesting. You know, the ex well, first off, I think we probably all have a variety of students to expect. All the examples I'm using are actually from level one classes. There's an example we'll get to in a minute from a level two class, but um, so I don't think so these are real world level one students that are saying these types of things. I think maybe for me, it really gets into a bigger discussion that ties in the whole framework together. Um, knowing, and this is also something that I'm going to bring up in a second on some practical things. Like, I know we're going to debrief at the end of the day. I know what some of the things are going to be like. I've seen this movie before. So I try to front load a lot of things early in the day or early in the trip. And I will try to, and I might have a hard time coming up with a concrete example right now, but I will try to think of things in the morning where I know, like, hey, this is a thing we are trying to do today. And we're really like, hey, we want to make these kinds of decisions. Hey, what do y'all think? Should we all make sure we heard every voice today? And how are we going to do that? And then at the end of the day in the debrief, because we front loaded, like, hey, here's a thing that we're going to try to do in the debrief, I would want to bring up, did we hear every voice today? Because we said that was something we were going to do today. Um, I don't know, Ron, do you have anything else or
Yeah, I think an example from Al's question that really pops out in my head is the student that has so little backcountry experience when they take their level one. Like some of the things that student really needs to debrief, it just involves like the right apparel, and how they need to go to the resort and get an uphill pass and work on their skinning technique and that kind of stuff before they were so maxed out with the activity itself.
totally,
They had very little bandwidth to reflect on things like the plan and the weather and where the good snow was. That's where Al's question really resonates with me. And but to me, that's okay. That's the genius of debrief. Like everybody has something to learn, and maybe for that student that has so much less experience with backcountry travel, that's the thing they learned. They're gonna find touring partners that are closer to their level for their next outing, and they're gonna do really modest snowed in road runs for their next tour. So it still kind of fits with your model, I think, but that's where Al's example hits me.
yeah, and thanks for giving me a little headspace to think about that too for a few seconds, because it also brings me back to the idea of, AIARE courses teach a risk management process. What we want is people to have we want them to leave having a process that they can use. And if that process leads them to discover today that I need to get used to making turns with a backpack on, or I need to figure out the right size for my snowshoes in on fresh snow, or I can use smaller snowshoes on spring snow, um, or how much water do I need to bring? I think all of those things should and can come up in the debrief, just to kind of piggyback onto what you're saying, Ron. Um, yeah, it doesn't have to be, you know, I learned yeah, to thread the needle through the, and use a clinometer to like what my margin of safety is on a persistent weak layer day is demonstrably different than what it is on a new snow day, right? So I don't know. I think we can separate those two.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah,
know, does that
I
help,
think so.
Al? Or is that?
I hope so.
I hope so too.
Al can pop pop in more into the chat if or another
I
question.
hope so.
Yeah.
Anything else? Or are we going forward?
Let's go ahead.
Okay, great. So these are and this is straight out of the SlabLab playbook. We try to do research, and we try to actually come up with actionable tips and things that people can actually do, not just interesting insights. So these are some things that are right out of my practice of teaching area avalanche classes. And and it really is, I have two objectives when I'm doing this. One is I want to teach debriefing. I also want to normalize it. Like I want people to believe, because it's how I do it, that hey, you go into the backcountry, you finish your day debriefing. I want that to be in the culture. So, and every day I'll start my day by saying, hey, we're gonna debrief this afternoon and make that in work that into our plan for tomorrow. And I think this might be a harder, I was thinking about this last night. This might be a harder concept for newer instructors. I know when I was a brand new instructor, it was hard enough for me to stand up in front of a room and talk to people and know what the material was that I was going to be presenting, and try to keep a group together and do everything. But it really does help when we can have a bigger picture view of the whole course and know, like, hey, tonight we're going to be debriefing. So let's think about that as we start the day and plant that seed. Um, I take every opportunity I get in the field to try to turn it into a debriefing moment later. The example I have here, the student says, "Hey, we should have done this, that, or the other thing." I'm like, I don't question that. I don't try to defend what we did. I simply am like, "Oh, that's great. Write that down in your note. Pull out your field book, write that down," which adds some utility to the field book, by the way, but write that down and we'll bring it up later in our debrief. It'll be great. I'm glad you brought that up. Right. And it also kind of moves, like I don't have to spend the time in the class then answering that question or defending a decision. I'm honoring it, but we're gonna put it in the parking lot, but we're gonna get back to it. I mentioned earlier right sizing. This is something that I think is something that we as instructors can really move the culture forward with. We can model multiple size debriefs. One of the things that I like to do is on most of the classes I teach are 2 field days. At the end of the first field day, I go through the complete debrief prompts. We have a long discussion. We get a lot of benefit from it. We write things down in the book for the next day. Um, And then the second day, we know from yesterday that we benefited from that debrief because our plan is different, because we've incorporated what we learned from our debrief. So we already know that there's a benefit. Everyone's very excited by that. And then at the end of the day, I will find some way to make it a faster debrief depending upon where I am. There's a venue we use where there's a like half-mile walk that you have to do to get back to the car. And I'm like, hey, let's do the debrief while we're walking. Or there's another venue we use where there's like I don't know, half a mile or mile long transportation like time on the snow. Like you're like flat skiing back to the trailhead. And I'll stop at the start of that section and say, hey, let's review what the debrief prompts are now, so that when we get to the end, you've been thinking about it and we can go through them and get through them pretty efficiently. And some days I'm just like, hey, really fast, what was the high point of the day? What'd you learn? Tell me one thing. And usually I'll show people like, hey, that is a short debrief. It still counts as a debrief. Think about all the things that we learned yesterday from doing a pretty full-throated debrief. We learned a lot. We learned this and that and the other. Today, we're doing a small debrief. It's still a debrief. We're only learning this much though. So you can do one or the other, but do one of them and recognize when you do the short one, we're not getting the same value from it. This next section, the create a safe space, I think this is super important as instructors to create a safe space for our students. And it means a couple of different things for me, and I'd love to hear what other people think about this. Um, the example I give on the slide, you see a student or sense a student isn't happy about something, you know, talk to them and make sure they're cool with it, but like, hey, let's bring that up in the debrief. And I think that is, and make sure that you're creating a safe space for them to share their experience. You know, I speak for myself, I want all of my students to feel safe. And if you're a fan of the concept of psychological safety, which is suggests that we have inclusion safety, learner safety, contributor safety, challenger safety. Challenger safety means they can challenge me. They can question what I'm doing and I'm cool with it. And we should be cool with it. We should model challenger safety with our students. There was a class I taught a couple years ago, and it was perfectly timed because it was wicked cold, and we were going to stand out in the parking lot for a long time getting our trip plans together. We all knew this. So I sent a message to everybody in the class and said, hey, we're going to be standing in the parking lot for a long time. Bring warm, comfortable boots, bring lots of layers, bring like, go into the stadium layers, bring a thermos full of hot coffee because we're going to be standing out there for a while. And I want you to be reasonably comfortable while we're doing it. And so we did that. Oh, and the very, very cool thing about this particular trip is that there was an instructor or an aspiring instructor who needed to review a modern class. So he was there watching the whole thing with me. And in the debrief for that day, at the end of the day, we're in a restaurant having our debrief. One of the students said, hey, it really kind of sucked that we were standing out in the cold so long. Had I known we were going to be doing that, I would have like brought extra layers and a thermos. And it really would have been cool if you had told us to bring extra layers and a thermos. And I was like, God, that's a great point. I'm gonna write that down in my book for the next time. Next time it's really cold, I'm gonna tell my students to bring extra layers and a thermos. And after that, the aspiring area instructor came up to me. He's like, you told everybody to bring extra layers and a thermos. I said, I know, but that wasn't what the lesson was not. I had warned them. The lesson was it's cool to debrief. It's cool to challenge the person of authority on the team. And if I can't model that, I don't expect my students to be able to model that. And if I push back hard on that, do I expect them to deal with, the jerky partners who are going to push back on it? Right? So we should be modeling the behavior that we want to see in our students. And the last thing I was going to say is debrief anytime. Like a lot of people have this idea that debriefing is only at the end of the trip. There was an AIARE 2 class that I was teaching. Everybody experienced, yep, we're going to stick together, stay together. This is how far we're going to be apart. Great. We get on the first slope. Everybody scatters. And I'm in the back of the group with the slow person. And we catch up to the rest of the team. And the person in the back who was slow all the way as we were catching up to them because they had stopped. They were like, I thought we said we were going to stick together. I said, yeah, that's what we said. And when we got together, when we did regroup, I was like, hey, what happened there? Like, let's talk about that and bring it up. And we aired it out. And because we aired it out in the middle of the trip, the rest of the trip, everybody stuck together. As a matter of fact, the very fast person in the group hung back with the slowest person, and they had great conversations together for the rest of the day. And that never would have happened had we not stopped in the middle of the day and said, hey, we're kind of, I like to call it an in brief. I'm sure there's a better name for it, but debrief right in the middle of the day. Like, hey, that moment, that didn't work for me. Let's talk about it. So, we should be debriefing anytime we can, I think. So it's not just, they're not heavy. They don't have to be heavy. They don't have to be long. You should be able to put on your thickest skin and take it if people are challenging what you're saying. Prep people that we're going to be doing it later. Make it part of the daily routine, even if it's a simple one. And I think we'll be moving the culture forward towards better debriefs, which will be part of the overall, performing the AIARE risk management framework more effectively.
Well, yeah, I love that we went through that slide, Richard. I was
Oh,
psyched.
thanks.
I was psyched to have you just share your tactics there, and I hope everyone got a lot out of those 5 suggestions. But I'm sure in our audience we have lots of suggestions of your own, lots of different ways you've tried to teach debrief, challenges you've had with it, successes you've had with explaining this to people. And what I'd love to do is have anyone who wants to share, just raise hand, and I'll turn your mic on. You share with us, and let Richard riff on that, and see what we can do with that with your tactics. Oh, there's a hand. There's Al. Great. I'm allowing you to talk, Al.
So one of the things as I show them a field book, whatever field book you choose to use, is I show them my own debriefs. So they get to see debriefs from when I'm out with partners, when I'm out guiding, etc. So they see the detail that goes into it. And then they recognize, okay, you do this too. So that gets that stage kind of set at the beginning. In my earlier question, one of the things I try to get at is to debrief themselves during the day. Was the kit well prepared? Was there personal care time? How did they do on the individual skills that we were going for? One of your other statements on the, hey, I'm going to tell them to bring a thermos, I'm going to tell them to bring a puffy, etc., is a great thing. And it's a little bit, it can be slightly construed to human factoring them, to try to show them how strong the human factor really is in their day. And that, hey, I did tell you to believe this, but boom, we move on and have you and recognize, okay, I need to do this also. So I also have them debrief their ability to take the weather and put it in their book and how accurate that was. What was the snowpack did they see, or is the snowpack still pretty Greek to them? And then we go through kind of the risk hazards of the day to see where they are really there, or were they just fire hosed and they don't have that information? Because my experience is so many come in green. The industry's done a wonderful job to convince them they need an avalanche course. And I think it goes along with buying a tech setup. They buy a tech setup, they take an avalanche course. But there's a ton of great things you've got going on here, which is the benefits approach. Because I think stressing the benefits does get them to think about doing it.
Yeah, I'm gonna let Richard respond in a second, Al, but before he does, I just want you to hear how insightful that comment is. In one iteration of these slides, we didn't start with benefits. My suggestion was to lead with a few a few examples of accidents that just came from people making the same mistake, even though they should have learned that lesson in the past. It's such a negative way to go about this. And Richard's suggestion was, hey, let's spin it positive. It's so much more compelling. I completely love that note, Al.
I'll certainly be using that approach of here's why you want to do this. This is what you get out of it.
Yeah. You know, and Al, first off, Al, it's great to hear from you. I haven't talked to you in years. Um, uh, One of the things, so help me out. Is this what I heard you say? Because and I think we can all benefit from this. Like when you're having your students go through and like it's getting a little like are you having them like identify the delta between like what they were able to see and what an instructor was able to see, so to try to give them an idea of like, wow, I'm on a path but I'm at the start of the journey, not the end of the journey. Am I picking up on that, or am I making up stories that I didn't hear?
It's a little bit of a made up. What I'm trying to get them to do is really look at themselves over the course of the day and say, the kid is one of my key parts because I think they all come in with the wrong kit. 90% of them come in with a kit that there is a lift serve kit because they're making a transition from lift serve skiing to backcountry skiing, and their kit is all designed for lift serve skiing. Gore-Tex jackets. Now, maybe it's a Pacific PNW thing, but otherwise, the rest of the touring world really doesn't use a Gore-Tex jacket very much, or Gore-Tex pants. They don't really breathe very well. So their kit, their pack, their skins, etc. How did their kit all work for them? Then how did they translate all this online learning to their initial plan that they're coming up with for the day and how that day looks? Then how did the snow? We talked about the weather in the morning. We all know mountain weather changes. Was that weather accurate as we looked at numerous forecasts? What was the hazard? Did we find the avalanche problem or not? And then how did they do incorporating new skills? The old AIARE manual used to have this thing of, I'm comfortable doing it alone. I need a peer. I need an expert. And so I asked them, where are you in this skill continuum? And then we kind of relate it all to the plan. And what I prefer to do in my courses is have them all debrief in silence first. So there's no groupthink. I'm a big believer in groupthink. I've seen it happen too many times in my regular world job that I used to do. So I don't like groupthink. And so by them doing it in private, they don't get to glom onto somebody else's ideas. They need to write them their own.
I love it.
And then I have them go through the debriefs. Each person takes something out. How was this? Because you know how they all did. You see the kit. It's a person who started the morning in a puffy.
Right.
And we're going to tour 1,600 feet. They're an endurance athlete or they're going to boil.
Nice.
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Al. We've got Sarah too. Sarah wants to share. I'm going to allow you to talk now. There, it's on. Go ahead, Sarah. Oh, it looks like you're muted. We can't hear you, Sarah. We can see your mic's on. Oh, oh boy, I can't figure out why we can't hear Sarah. I'm gonna just let it roll. Maybe she's working with her mic. And meanwhile, in the chat, we've got a couple folks.
Yeah, if Angela is willing to share,
yeah,
I think both of these, Angela and TJ, I'd love to hear more about how they're these examples.
Let's turn Angela on. Here we go.
Am I unmuted?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hi, everybody. No, I think that sometimes when new students come into the classes, they can feel pretty overwhelmed when you're trying to plan. And so what I like to do is just give them one thing to focus on, to really look for that in the environment. And then at the end of the day, when we debrief and we say where it was located or where they saw it or if they experienced it, then we incorporate it together into the plan for the next day. So I feel like it's just that reduces that fire hose mentality where it's too much in all of it trying to figure it all out, but just to look for that one key thing. And I usually just generally sort of help them decide what that one key observation is going to be, and then just assign it, out. So that, that's a little hard. And sometimes if it's a more advanced group, or if people do have some experience, or they're just refreshing themselves, then we let it kind of be a free for all. How about I look for this, or how about I see this, or how about I do a test slope or something? Just give them one thing to do. And I think that makes a difference for the debrief, especially because then you can really sort of wrap that up. That's all.
I think that's awesome. And in my mind, because I'm constantly trying to think of like how to keep the wheel moving forward, and how to really normalize this. Not just like let's extract some value today, but how do we normalize just the behavior debriefing, Angela? I'm wondering, like, if I think I might take that idea and riff on it, and then during the debrief, then ask a question. And I'm freestyling this now. I'm like, during the debrief, would I then ask, and what about tomorrow? Do we want to take, like, we decided we wanted to make this observation in the morning. We did it. We got this, we saw or didn't see this. Is it going to be relevant? Is that same observation going to be relevant tomorrow? Yes, no, maybe, why?
I like
And
it.
then,
Yep, exactly. And just to incorporate it into the plan. I like that a lot, because that way it sort of validates their experience of what they're seeing and doing, and how they turn it into tomorrow's plan.
I love that. And I particularly like if we can show utility in this, not just debrief because the prompts say so, but debrief. I debriefed. We did something where I gathered information that was used by the group, and we used that information on the next plan. Like that creates utility for the task, and I think that is how we get people to keep doing it. I think that's awesome.
Cool. Thanks, Angela. TJ too, it's made a great comment in the chat. Why don't we let TJ speak up?
Oh, way to put me on the spot. So, front loading is a big part of it. I'm with Angela. I teach a college course, and the benefit I get to have with students is we have 4 additional Fridays of skiing where they actually practice under myself and my co-instructor, and they're mentored through the whole process. And I also carry a little bag. College students have a short attention span. So number one, I teach this in other classes, but you have to embrace the silence, right? People process things differently and at a different pace. And so allowing time by giving them, headphones, I said, so I have mini erasers. I have a skeleton, I have headphones. The magnifying glass I have is what do we look for tomorrow? And I have these in a little bag, and I pull it out and hand them out to people, or I can hand them out in the morning and say, this is what you're going to focus on today. Because I recognize that I think situational awareness, I see it lacking in our youth these days because nothing lasts for 30 seconds except TikTok videos. But situational awareness is also something we're trying to teach them. But if we're trying to teach them how to be situationally aware to the 75 things that's going on while we're out in the backcountry, and then they're also struggling to get uphill because they don't know how to skin properly. Like someone else, Al said, I think, or someone said. So giving them one thing to focus on, and it eases their mind a little bit and allows them to learn. And then, like Angela said, at the end, put it all together. Everyone works on the whole debrief together, which really does inform the plan for tomorrow. So that's my 3 days of field for the first 3 days. And then we have, like I said, additional Fridays, and they come with the plan. They choose where we go. They pretty much sort of lead the day. I keep them out of trouble. And then we debrief how they facilitated the decision-making framework and the risk management framework. So thanks for letting me share.
Yeah, thank you.
Richard, I love TJ's suggestion for this idea of handing out these props um, as a way to maybe coach an Area 2 student. Like you might be the one that has to nudge along the debrief. You might be the one who has to facilitate this. So are you going to hand out the headphones? Are you going to hand out the microphone, like
Right.
the magnifying glass? I'm going to tinker with that, TJ. Great suggestion.
Yeah, and hey, I'll just tell you, as an area instructor, for just taking on that role for a minute, one of the things I love about these types of events is getting the different perspectives from all of our colleagues, learning new ways of doing things like, oh, someone else is, doing this and somebody else is doing that and someone else is doing the other thing. And there's all tools that we can put into our toolboxes, and we'll find the right time to pull them out, I think. So I think it's great to get all the instructors together.
We've got one more hand raised. This is Alec. Alec, I'm turning your mic on.
Cool. Can you hear me?
We got you.
Yeah.
Awesome. I apologize for running late. So if you already answered this question in the beginning, just say like, "Hey, look at the recording later." It's, if you have a student that's like being combative afterwards during the debrief, where like you're trying to explain something, or it could be even recreationally, where you're trying to explain something to them of like an area improvement, and they're just fighting you on it. How do you approach that without being like, you're wrong, but like trying to coach them of like to see like what you're trying to point out to them?
Wow, that's a heavy one. And what was Alec? What were you trying to? What was the example you gave?
I didn't have an example of it, but just like I've just been thinking out like either recreationally or just like this would be my first year teaching Abby courses, and just even just in recreationally in the past, like during debriefs, you might try to explain something to someone that's like, it is very evidence based and like it is taught in curriculum or at a higher level of like this is why this is a good idea, and they're really sticking to their guns, and like because you're like to your point earlier, you're there not to like to shut them down, but to try to like prompt them in a certain direction, but doing so in a way that's not like silencing them or just like making them like shutting them down, like trying to be like with them as opposed to above them.
Yeah. So I I live with this book. Like I'm an area instructor geek. I live with this book on my desk. I have a whole stack of them in my library right over here from years past. And the first thing I think of, so that situation is like you're recreationally skiing and somebody's like, I'm not buying into this whole debrief plan. The heck with you. I want to go have beers and I don't want to talk about the day. Is that kind of the
Not necessarily that, but like I've seen whether it's like during debriefs, like just shadowing area courses or recreation. It's not necessarily like the debrief itself, which is hard enough to get them to engage in.
right?
But then during the debrief itself, like when you talk about maybe a dynamic for the day
Mm,
or something, and you're explaining like, hey, here's how we could have done better, and then they just like they're sticking to things that just like really are not evidence based, and you're trying to like speak to them. Like let's say for example, like they take off ahead of everyone else, and they like one of the experiences I had was recreationalists is your one of your teammates like decides to just jump on ahead, and like when you wait and they're really not like patient with people to catch up to have decision making, and you try to explain that during the debrief and they don't want to hear it, and so you're like, how do you
right.
do that without pushing up on your glasses? And well, like, well,
Perfect. I got it. I got it. So a couple of things. I got two things for you. One, and I was reaching for the book for this. We start our day with assemble your group and know who's on your team. That person just identified who they are, like more so than they will do when you're like, tell me your name and what kind of gear you're on and blah, blah, blah. Now you're actually getting into the meat of things about who these people are. So great. And now I know that you don't want to hang out with slower people. Cool. Let's plan a trip where that's not going to happen. Or let's, put a team together where that's not going to happen. And now we know, like it's at the very start of the risk management framework, right? It's at the top of the planning page is who's on my team. And we found that out by debriefing. And if somebody doesn't have the stomach for it or whatever, or didn't like the way the trip ran, it's like, great, now I know. Um, so maybe that's the solution. The other thing, and this is like the big picture, like I'm not trying to teach people in an avalanche class that that crystal accretion happens in the opposite direction of the vapor transport through the ice air lattice of the snowpack. That is not something I'm trying to teach people. It's something I know, but it's not something I'm trying to teach people. When it comes to like teaching debriefs, what I want is, will this person debrief their trip tomorrow when they're not with me? That's what I want. And if that person or the rest of the team could see some value coming out of, hey, we debriefed, then we're winning. I'm not trying to re-educate someone on some fine point of avalanche science in a debrief. So I would take that as the victory right there. It's like, and that would be my North Star for doing a debrief in a class is, am I setting these people up to see the value, the utility, so that they do this on their own when they're not with me next week? How's that sit with
That
you?
is helpful. Thank you.
Is it?
It's a,
It
it's
is.
a,
It does answer my question. Yeah, I appreciate it.
Okay.
it's a tough one, Alec, for sure. Yeah, it rarely happens, but once in a while we do get some people who they seem to have come to course to pick a fight. It's an odd thing to deal with.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you why you're wrong.
All right. Thank you, Alec. Let's see. Any other hands raised? I don't see any. Then maybe we'll transition to our final just portion of the webinar, and that's just Q&A. If there's Alec just kind of launched us right into it, but if
All right.
there's any other Q&A from anything from the webinar, and now's a good time to just pop it in the Q&A, and we're having a good time asking. So if you like, we can turn your mic on too. There's a hand raised. Who's that? That's Aaron
And
Rose.
before we dive in it, I just want to say this out loud. Alec, thanks for I don't think I know you. If you're new to being an instructor, welcome. I'm stoked that you are, and I'm stoked that you're here asking questions. And I hope anybody, and this is true when I'm teaching classes or when I'm out guiding, like the new person, the quiet person, the least experienced person, that's the person that I really want to engage with. So thank you for speaking up, and please keep it coming.
It looks like we have a question from Aaron Rose. I'm
Awesome.
turning the mic on.
Yeah, hello. So my question has to do with the class time. Some people do a hybrid, some people do in person. And so I'm thinking about opportunities to role play. What would you recommend are good strategies to push the debrief experience before you go to the field?
Yeah, can I dive in, Rod?
Yeah, please. I have an answer for him too, but go ahead.
Okay, great. Well, first off, I am a big fan of the whole framework, prepare, plan, ride, debrief. And I think we can apply it in a lot of areas. And I even said, it's prepare, plan, go to a job interview, debrief, prepare, plan, go on a date, debrief, prepare, plan, have dinner, debrief. It's how we get better at all these things. And when I'm teaching, and I teach in a couple of college programs and also for my own company. And so I teach in a bunch of different formats. When I am teaching in a hybrid style, we have 2 Zoom calls and 2 field days and online self-paced material, and then some extra material that we create. And when we are doing the Zoom calls before the classes, I set aside time at the end of those calls to debrief each call. I'm like, hey, this is part of our process. Prepare, plan, have a Zoom call, debrief. And we debrief the Zoom call. And what I'm really trying to do is just set this pattern of, this is what we do. We debrief at the end of all of these things. And so that means that by the time we're on our first field day, we're on our 3rd debrief. So I don't know, that might be, and I think that's unusual. I don't know that a lot of people do that. So that might be an interesting idea in the hybrid classes anyway.
Yeah, that sounds, when I have a full day to work with Aaron, I really like setting up the debrief with a little activity where I might assemble some students, 6 students, let's say, and just tell them, okay, with everyone when I say go, I want you to pull out your transceiver, your probes and your shovels, assemble them, stab them into the snow, and put your backpack back on. And then I'll time that. It's like, okay, it took you all 4 minutes to make that happen. Now, as a group, discuss how you can decrease this time. I want less time, right? And it's just a little game. But all I'm introducing is this idea that like talking to each other is a recursive process. And then we iterate and then we try it again. And now we're down to 3 minutes and 30 seconds. All right, now go again. And eventually, like, we're not only setting up for the rescue practice we'll do the following day, but I've also just teed up the debrief conversation pretty nicely about how valuable it is to share everyone's experience and knowledge.
I am so stealing that idea,
Hmm.
That is so good.
Let's see. TJ has TJ's got another one. I can't find him to turn him on. There he is. Go ahead, TJ.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
So I teach outdoor leadership, and I'm a DMFer. I came back into AIARE in like 2010 or something, and we had the decision-making framework, and I loved that, and I've adapted that to, with AIARE's permission, to show it to students and talk about planning other types of outdoor trips. Obviously it's not what are the mountain conditions or the avalanche conditions, but it's what are the river conditions? What are the conditions in the area we're going? Is there snowpack? What's our terrain like? Those sorts of things. And it's actually, I loved it. That's why I got glommed onto AIARE. Was the original DMF. I was like, damn, this is such a great visual of a process I go through. Yeah, so I just want to share that.
Cool, thanks,
Love
TJ.
it.
Any other questions? All right, I'm not seeing any more questions for now.
Is Alec have his hand up?
Oh, Alec does, yeah.
Is that a new time?
Yes, there's Alec here. We've got you on again.
Cool. I got a question for y'all. Like, I've noticed a lot, like after AIARE courses, it tends to be that recreationists, I think they end up like viewing it as the level 1 and the rescue as like a certification rather than like being given a process to continue. Like I've definitely noticed when I go out with friends and it's like I ask them to use the blue book, they kind of give you this look like you're being condescending to them. And so I'm wondering like what tactic or like what you do during the course to emphasize like this is not a one and done. Like we're giving you a process that you should utilize in the future.
Yeah, okay. Well, there's a couple things in there. One, I think I have really strong feelings about the AIARE 2 class, and that and that quite frankly, I'm going to talk as an AIARE instructor now, no other role. I think AIARE has an obligation actually to promote the AIARE 2 class in a different way and really move in the same way that AIARE was largely responsible, I think, for stressing the importance of formal education in the culture. I think AIARE has a job to do to stress that avalanche education really is a continuum, and I hope that they take they take on that responsibility. But I think that as an instructor, one thing I have found is like until I actually taught some AIARE 2s, it was really hard for me to promote the idea of like what's next and go, you know, like here's where your path is. So I would encourage every instructor to any way you can get onto an AIARE 2 class, and then once you see it, then it's easier to go back to a first day AIARE 1 student, and you have this idea like, oh, I know where this is going to go eventually. And I think that can be really helpful. And in showing people like it's not one and done. And you know, I'm with you. Like I use my field book. I carry my field book in my pants pocket every day I go skiing, and I make it visible at trailheads. And I love it. Like same thing. Like I've been writing in my field book, and people have come up next to me and like, "Oh, did you just take you must have just taken an AIARE 1 class." And I'm like, "Well, yeah, I guess." After I've taught it taught a few of them. And there is this perception that it is a student thing. It's not a backcountry user thing. And I think it's up to us, frankly, to change that culture. Like I think as instructors should be using our field books. We as instructors should be modeling that every day. I tell my students, I'll give you $20 if you see me in the field without my field book in my pants pocket. The exception to that is in the spring when I'm wearing shorts and it's in my backpack. But it's a cultural thing, I think.
Alec, I have a lot of success with just turning the field book around and letting them see. I mean, it's almost a work of art, I think. Like I've got all my notes and all my drawings, and the rigor of it is persuasive. You know, it's like, oh, well, it's actually not just rubber stamping like little epithets. It's like it's really compelling when you really use it.
Yeah. I think when people see the process work and the magic happen, like, oh wow, we had a better trip today because we went through this process yesterday. We debriefed at the end of the day and we called out behaviors that we didn't like, and we recognized behaviors that we did like, and that literally moved the needle for our day today. When people see that, I think they're more likely to say, I'm going to go and I'm going to do this on my own. And I'll tell people like, hey, because you're going to go out there into the wild and your friends are going to be like, oh, we don't actually do that. And I'm like, well, then find other people to ski with, because I do it. I'm not the only person in the world who does. Plenty of people do. You just got to find them.
Yeah.
Show them it
thanks for
works and they'll do it.
Thanks for that question, Alec.
Yeah, for sure.
Any other hands raised in the crowd? I saw one pop up and then go away, but that's okay. Oh, there's one. Charlie, we're turning your mic on now. And yeah, there we go.
Hear me now?
We got
Yeah.
you.
Good. Okay, so I find debrief and plan are like this firm handshake. So the end of debrief, particularly on day 2, because we did a full day tour, is, hey, we just did a debrief. And let's say I have 6 people in my class. I do 2 groups of 3. I get 2 maps out, like the beacon maps, their apps out. I said, let's plan a tour tomorrow based on what we just had worked on debrief. So I'm watching them do a plan. I'm not saying anything, looking over their shoulder. Occasionally they look at me, I might say something. And based on that plan, they'll start asking me, you know, what I learned today in the debrief versus the plan, partly is to get business. They'll go, you know, maybe I should take an intro to ski touring class with you guys. Or maybe we should split the 4 of us a guided trip and do a longer trip that we can learn some skills on this. And then it works really well to do that planning after the debrief for a following day as an exercise. And then they always think about that debrief much stronger that way. At least that's my experience on day 2. If that makes sense to you.
It makes sense to me. I'm a believer, you know, like that it flows, right? The debrief flows right into the plan for the next day. So I think we're on the same team on that.
Yeah. But having actually doing it is kind of nice,
Right.
you know, because they get a beacon map out, say where I work, they get their apps out, they have all these different questions, and all of a sudden, a lot of things come up for their plan that they learned a little bit in the debrief that they hadn't considered before, which is nice.
Yeah, I can totally see that.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, thanks, Charlie.
Yeah.
Right. Any other hands raised?
Did we ever get Sarah sorted
No.
out?
No, we
No.
never got to hear Sarah's voice or see a question in the Q&A, but that's okay.
All right.
Can we go to the last slide?
Yeah.
Folks, tonight was a lot of fun. It was really educational for me to hear from Richard and from all of you. I just love these. Our next one is on November 11th. And on that one, we're talking about productive learning environments accommodating all the learners, all the different kinds, and how we make space. On December 2nd, we're talking about teaching the basic skills that students often lack. So, those tour planning skills and backcountry travel skills and winter preparedness skills that aren't necessarily embedded in our framework. How do we make sure they have that stuff? And that's not on November 11th. We just got the wrong date on there. That's on December 3rd. But that's split boarding students wish their skiing instructors knew these tips, for sure. Just some helpful hints there that come straight from our split boarding students. Great, that's what's coming up for us. Our last slide. These webinars, we improve all the time with your feedback, and we'll have a debrief as an AIARE staff, and we'll use your feedback to continue improving our continuing education series. So please just capture that QR there and fill out that form and provide any feedback on your experience tonight. And we really, really appreciate it. It really helps us improve this continuing education. Also, if you want to follow up with Richard in any way, if you want his contact information, you can request it in any of those fields, and I will make sure that's okay with Richard and pass along a connection if you'd like that. But you can make that request of us through that form, and we're happy to connect you if Richard has time.
Yeah, and I do, and I thank you. Before people dive off, I wanted to just say this out loud. One, I do thrive on the feedback, on the debrief of this whole webinar. So please help me be better by debriefing this and giving me some. Let me know what I did that you think I should do again, and let me know what I did that maybe I should leave out next time. And I'd be happy to get that. And I also, as fellow AIARE instructors, I encourage us all to reach out to each other. You can reach out to me anytime if you have questions or ideas, anything that you can offer me to help me be a better instructor, or questions that you have. If you have a question, it'll probably help me be a better instructor if I try to figure out an answer. So please, if anybody's interested, feel free to reach out any single time.
Great. Thank you, Richard.
Yeah.
And thank you, everyone. We'll call it a night and look for this recording to pop up on YouTube.
Awesome. See y'all. Pray for snow.
There's lots of thanks and well wishes in the chat,
Yeah.
Richard, as folks sign off.
Very nice people.
Nice. All right. Well, I'm going to call it a night. Thank you, Richard.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Here we're
Take
signing
care.
off.